Hello there, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. I'm Kai. Today we're going to be taking a look at how I see the USA as a European after spending a month there. So this will be an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure where they've been, so let's jump in and have a look, shall we? I guess depending on where they go is depending on their impressions potentially. I don't know. So. All right, let's begin.
I've just spent the last month crossing the United States, and as a French person, I have to say that I have a lot of thoughts. So the US is such a fascinating place to me, and it feels like a lot of people have strong opinions of the country. Like some people really love it, some people absolutely hate it, and I want to give you my unique perspective as someone who once lived in the US but has chosen to leave it for Europe. But first, I want to tell you about a few thoughts I have about the US after this 1 month journey. So during my trip, I crossed the US from east to west, going from New York to San Francisco by train. And this took around 4 days. So my first impression is that the US is such a massive country. Like France, where I'm from, in comparison, is roughly the size of Texas. And you know, even though I feel like I know the US pretty well, since I used to live there for a few years, my partner of 8 years is from Chicago, and I've personally been to around 15 states. However, the country is just so big that I feel like I have so much more to discover. And I do feel that life in the US can be very different depending on where you live. Obviously, living in a big city like New York is not the same as, for example, living in rural Texas, where I've also been. But there's many different local cultures depending on where you are in the country. But anyway, just crossing the US, the other thing I felt is that the nature is so beautiful and there's so much empty space and untouched natural beauty.
To be honest, I love the concept of this, just taking a nice train around, you know, from state to state. Because I feel like you're just going to see so much as well, and you're covering a lot of ground. I don't know how expensive your trains are, but actually this looks like an incredible idea, like a train road trip maybe, you know, jump off, see a little city for a bit, jump back on, off you go. That sounds pretty cool, actually.
That changes quite a lot from a state to another. For example, we crossed Colorado and we went into the snowy Rockies, which are very different from, let's say, the type of nature you can see in Utah, which we also crossed. And by the way, from the train, there were places that we could only see from the train, like no roads go there. And this really showed me how much empty space there is. Oh my God,
look at that. What a view from a train. So this is just like natural beauty. You know, if you wanted to go there and see that, you'd have to be hiking pretty much, you know, pull up somewhere a distance away and hike to this area to see this. Like, that's awesome. I love that.
The US. And in France and in Europe in general, there's way fewer places like that. I feel everything is so much smaller. It is way harder to find a place where there's not a little village or there's not other people. And you know, taking a train across the US is obviously more about enjoying the journey than going efficiently from point A to point B. But it made me think quite a lot about how the US is still a very car-centric society. In Europe, we have a really good network of bullet trains and trains that go pretty much everywhere. And obviously this comes with the size of the countries. France is pretty tiny if you compare it to the US, but I feel our network of trains and public transport is really good and you don't need a car as much. And just to give you an idea, my boyfriend Bobby, who is from Chicago, he got his license when he was 16 and he started driving at 14. Well, on my side, you can start driving at 16 and then get your license when you're 18 in France. I actually only got my license a few years ago because I live in a big city, I don't need to use a car, and I just didn't feel the need because I have a bike and I have public transport. And
see, that's the thing though. I think like it's easy to live somewhere like a city where you don't technically need a car, so you can get about with a, you know, public transport, a bike and things like that. But I don't know, the freedom a car gives you, it's just that split second of like, you know what, I'm going to go on a road trip over there for an hour today or a couple of hours. I'm going to go and see this. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to do that. I think the freedom of a car is just unrivaled, to be honest. And I've got a friend also that's very similar that doesn't have the ability to drive. And I'm just thinking like, damn, man, you're missing out on so much by not having the mobility of it. It's crazy.
I do feel that some places in the US are just meant for cars. For example, when I went to Buc-ee's in Texas, I didn't have a car and I had to sit on the ground in the parking lot to eat my food because there was no other space for me to sit. And you know, you're probably wondering what I was expecting because Buc-ee's is a gas station. But I do feel that even in gas stations in Europe, you do have more places where you can sit. You don't have to eat in your car. Recently, cars have gotten even bigger. Even in New York City, it feels like everyone has one of those massive trucks or SUVs. And for me, as someone who likes to bike or walk, it feels a tiny bit less safe because I feel that these are so big that if they hit me, I will die on the spot. At the moment, I'm currently pretty excited about cars because we got to test a self-driving car when we were in SF.
Ooh.
So as you can see, there was absolutely no driver. It was just us and the car. And I can tell you that it was a bit freaky at first, but it was also so fun getting to try an absolutely new thing.
I think that's a little bit weird though, like getting a self-drive car and not being able to drive yourself. You know, like because if things go wrong, what do you do? Is that legal? I guess maybe her partner could drive. That's how they got it. It's the only thing I can think of. Which, in fact, yeah, going back to it, she did say that. So.
US is this openness people have to new ideas and innovation. Like you can rebuild your own life how you want it here. And I feel in France there's more a set way to do things. And I've personally loved this influence in my life of, you know, following your own path and trying new things because it's what pushed me to quit investment banking, which was the career path I studied all my life for, and instead to do what I'm doing now, which makes me so much happier. And you know, maybe one of the reasons why things are like that is because the US is such a diverse country that's built on immigration. If you take the example of Bobby's family, they all came to the US many years ago, 200 plus years ago, because they were looking for a better life for themselves. Whereas my family, on the Spanish side, my dad is Spanish, has lived in the same village for at least 10 centuries, and only the younger generation started to move out. And you know, Europe as a continent is obviously very diverse. There's many literal countries that are next to each other. So a lot of people don't think too much about the US being diverse because people speak the same language and live in the same country as compared to Europe where I can take a 2-hour train and be in a fully...
Oh my God, I would absolutely love to go on a train in Switzerland. Just the thought of it. Wow.
Different country with a different language and a different currency. But in the US, there's actually many communities from all over the world. And one thing that surprised me at first is how important heritage is. Like people will tell you I'm half German, I'm Italian, when they mean obviously one of their grandparents came from one of these countries. And one thing that actually shocked me is that people will actually ask you directly about your ethnicity. Like people will ask you, what is your ethnicity? In France, this is such a big no-no. Ethnic statistics actually were forbidden after World War II. So you can't just ask people their ethnicity, for example, at a job interview or for anything that's official. And the first time I was asked about my ethnicity, it actually made me feel super bad. I was like, why do you want to know? Why does it matter? Because it has been ingrained in my mind that it's just another tool for discriminating against people. There's way more to this topic, but this is supposed to be a light and fun video, so we won't get too deep into that. To keep it light though, one thing I do love about the US is that people are so nice. It is so easy to talk to people. In the train, we were seated next to complete strangers, and it was just so fun to talk to them. We had great conversations, and that has been my overall experience really cool, in the US. From random strangers complimenting me randomly to cashiers making small talk, or even my all-time favorite, which is older ladies calling me honey or sweetie. I really love it. And obviously this is more true outside of New York City. Like for example, when I was in Texas to film my Buc-ee's video, everyone was so nice. I had the best small talk there. But at first, when I moved to the US, I didn't really master the art of small talk because it's not really a thing in France. And I feel there's a way of making small talk that's just not talking about the weather, but also keeping things light. We started our trip around the Halloween period in New York City, and the decor was so cool. All the houses had this very spooky fall.
You guys do it properly though. Like you do everything. Like whenever there's kind of a festive season or something to showcase, you guys go all in, and I really like that. Like over here, Halloween, to be honest, it's nothing like it is in the US. Not many people decorate. I mean, some people do, some people don't. Trick-or-treating, to be honest, it's not. I think it's definitely dying out. kids still kind of go with their parents, but not really much now. And I guess because not everyone is into it or doesn't really think of it, there's not many places to go either, you know, like houses wise. Whereas you guys, it just looks like it's a little bit over the top, but I love it for that reason as well. Because it's just like what I would want from Halloween and Christmas and everything like that. You know, if we visit, I'd love to visit during the festive period, whether it be, you know, well, I guess you can't really count Halloween as festive, I guess, but maybe you can, I don't know.
All decor, people dressed up on the day of, little kids were trick-or-treating, and that's something I've personally took from the US culture and added in my everyday life. France is not as festive as the US. We do celebrate holidays, but it's a bit less intense. It's maybe more seen as a religious thing. So now I'm pretty much celebrating everything. I'm doing Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, obviously, was already doing it, Valentine's Day, Easter, 4th of July, you name it, I'm
just a reason to celebrate, right?
I've also seen this festive atmosphere in sports. Over the years, I became a bit of an NFL fan, and a lot of people have commented about my Chicago Bears mug, and I know it's a tough team to support because they do tend to lose a lot, but it has been so fun. Like, I feel sports in the US is way more inclusive and family friendly, where I do feel sometimes in Europe, and of course I'm making a big generalization, people use that as an excuse to get drunk. All right, I've said it. If you're a European sports fan, just come at me in the comments. That's just my personal opinion. But you know, those game tickets, they're very expensive in the US. And that's a thing that I'm not always a fan of. I feel the US as a whole is more of a consumer society than France. And of course, we can't idealize France. France is also a consumer society, but I feel a lot of things in the US are made to make you spend money. And you know, as a whole, it's way nicer to shop in the US. The return process is so much easier. There's usually no questions asked. When in France, you're not always sure a store is gonna take your return. There's so many sales in the US, and I personally like making bigger purchases, like when I bought my computer or my phone in the US. But in return, there's more big chains, which I'm not always a fan of. I do try to go to those smaller shops, like this super cute bagel shop that we went to in New York instead of, you know,
that was crazy.
Chains, because I feel these have a soul, like they feed me on a deeper level. It's so nice to see the people who actually make your food than, you know, just eating food that's industrially made. But I won't go into too much detail because I've already made so many videos about food. Obviously, people have bigger houses than in France, and people tend to shop more for stuff, always getting the newer thing, newer car, newer clothes, phones, and so on. And you can really see that at thrift shops in the US when I thrift. There's always stuff from that.
I'm curious to see like an American thrift shop, because we have what we call charity shops, which is effectively what people like secondhand stuff, right? People sell it, give it in, whatever. Well, they don't sell it. They take it to the shop. They want to get rid of it. The shop then takes it and resells it, right? I assume that's the concept of a thrift shop. And I'm curious to see like the layout of like an American thrift shop versus a charity shop over here. Maybe that's something we'll film at some point. And just give you some comparisons, and then you guys can let us know.
That season, that's also being sold in shops right now, or from just a few seasons ago, whereas in France, in thrift shops, you can find stuff that's way older. The other thing that kind of surprised me is the cult of credit cards. People love like having credit card points and talking about credit cards. I do feel while points are great, there's still money that you have to spend, and credit card debt is more of an issue in the US than in France.
For me, credit cards, I've always been in a mindset that with money, it's like, if I can't afford it, I won't buy it, you know? I won't be like, well, I can get that now and pay later. No. If I can't afford it, I don't buy it. And that's always stuck with me, to be honest. And I think for that reason, I've never, ever been in debt. I've never had debt. Aside from a mortgage, which, in fairness, I think that's pretty unavoidable. But other than that, generally, it's like pay as I go. I'll save up and I'll pay it upright. And then that's it. It's done and dusted. There's no overheads. Nothing to think about, no monthly fees. I think that, to me, that's just, it makes sense. But I can understand. I think, though, the only thing is, if you have got a credit card, and it's like, I really want that, but I can't afford it. But I can afford it with a credit card, right? And I think that it's so easy to overspend and overreach that it's dangerous in a way. So maybe that's why I avoid it as well.
The thing that's different in France is the price that's shown, for example, on a restaurant menu is the price you're actually gonna pay. All the prices are inclusive of tax and tip in France. And you know, don't even get me started about tipping, because I do feel things have gotten a bit out of hand with the iPad machines. I always try to tip generously, and I always feel like I'm disappointing someone or I'm not tipping enough. And this really adds up. For example, I'm not getting as much coffee outside as I used to, because now with the iPads, I feel bad if I'm not giving a tip to the person who gave me a drip coffee. Anyways, I had promised you to tell you a bit more about why I left the US and if I would ever return. And the main reason why I don't live in the US is because when I was living in New York City, my visa was tied to my employment in investment banking. And when I became self-employed, I could only visit the US and not work there. So it was just easier to leave. At the moment, in any case, I would not qualify to be a permanent resident because I am not anywhere more than 6 months a year. Obviously, there's more to that, so feel free to leave a comment if you're really into immigration stuff. But if I had to go back, I would definitely want to be close to friends or family. So New York City, where I've lived, I have a lot of friends there. It has always felt like home to me. And I also love Chicago, where Bobby's from. We also have a lot of friends there, and it's always fun to visit and go back. But I wouldn't be against trying another US state. During my travels, my two favorite US states were Colorado for the nature and also Texas for the people and the food. As much as I love Texas barbecue, I'd probably miss the food quality in France. And if you want to know more about what I mean, I've made a full video breakdown comparing.
Well, that was a lovely video. It was nice. It was nice to see someone's honest perspective on everything when they've been there, and it sounds like although she'd only been there for a month, she'd been there for a lot longer as well. With work and stuff, so that was quite a nice insight to how things are and how they differ, the good, the bads, and things like that. Yeah, it was nice. A pleasant video, to be honest. I really enjoyed that. I'd like to check out more of her stuff to see maybe while she was in America or is in America. I don't know what her situation is currently, but it'd be nice to see her tour around and see some of that train journey, to be honest, because it looked breathtaking in some of the places. So yeah, definitely up for that. But yeah, if you made this far, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. Bye.